Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting for Monday the 27th of March 2017. We'll start with the opening prayer and acknowledgement. Thanks. You'll all stand. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision making, protect us and the community we serve from all that is evil, strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay my respects to the elders both past, present and future, for they hold memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. And welcome to everyone for this very historic meeting, which is the first webcast meeting for Albury City Council. And on that note, I will say this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council committee meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Thank you. Conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair and disclosure of political donations. I have two of those. I have one from Councillor Murray King. It's a pecuniary, significant, brief description of the conflict. He has professional association. The item number is CM 14.1 and 14.2 and the action is he will leave the chamber. I have one from Mr. James Jenkins, non-pecuniary, less than significant, and I'm a public officer of a company which has made submissions to two planning matters and they are in the council meeting and the council workshop tonight. The first one, the council meeting, is CM 14.3, Development Application 26 Lot Torrens Title Subdivision 47 Tabletop Road, Thaguna, and to the Council Workshop CW4 Development Application 428 Lot Subdivision Thaguna Park North. So thank you, and Ms Squire.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Environmental Planning Assessment Act 1979, Section 147, requires people submitting planning applications and/or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and/or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations and gifts include those of or above $1,000 in value. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. The forms are also available at the back of the chamber during meetings. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 79C1 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A, requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council or a council committee. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 2A of Part 6 of that Act.
Thank you, Ms Squire. Apologies, I have on the hard copy agenda that Councillor Doxey's an apology. Has the agenda been amended? Yes, it has. I just might mention in passing that the General Manager is also an apology for the meeting. A Merrill minute, we do not have any action plans. We have actions in progress, CM 6.3. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move council receive, note and accept the actions in progress.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no questions or debate, I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM7, confirmation of minutes of previous council meeting held on the Monday, the 27th of February 2017. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 27 February 2017 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no further question or debate, I'm happy to put that item. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Reports from council committees. Report from the Planning Development Committee held on Monday the 13th of March 2017. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To move the recommendation as a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second that motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, do you wish to speak
No,
to that
thank
at all?
you.
Thank you. Being no question or debate, I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 8.2, report from engineering works. Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to move that recommendation as a motion as well.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no question or debate, I'm happy to put that. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 8.3, report from Community and Culture Committee meeting held on Monday the 20th of March 2017. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to move the recommendation as a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Councillor Stutchbury.
Happy to second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
Thank you. There being no question or debate, I'm happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 8.4, report from the Finance and Administration Committee held on Monday the 20th of March. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendation as a motion.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
Thank you. There being no question or debate, happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 9, reports from community forums. There are none. Notice CM 10, notice of motions or notice of rescission. There are none. Presentations and deputations. CM 11. There are none. CM 12, reports and minutes of committees and working parties. 12.1, minutes of the Wonga Wetlands Conservation Association Annual General Meeting. Thanks. On Tuesday the 20th of October. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, Mr Chair. To move A and B as per the recommendation as a motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gluckin. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, did you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. We have documents for sealing. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation A and B as a motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no debate or question, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 14, officers' reports for consideration. Councillor King, did you wish to leave the chamber? Thank you, councillors. CM 14.1, reconstruction of Yambler Place, Albury, contract number 17/00251. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you, to move the recommendation as a motion that council accepts the tender from XL Grey Brunei for contract number 17/00251, reconstruction of Yambler Place in the lump sum amount of $310,000 $22,982, including GST. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gleichen. Councillor Doxey?
Happy to second the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gleichen, I have a question before you open debate. Are you happy to take the question?
Yeah.
Councillor Stutchbury, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. I've had a look, when I received this report, I went and had a look at Yambler Place, and then I went back the following day and had another look at it, and I accept that this was the result of a previous council decision at a budget meeting. But I just don't think that Yambler Place, I'm not the judge of a road, but it doesn't look that bad to me. There are plenty of roads in Albury that are worse than Yambler Place, in my view. And I guess my question to the relevant member of staff is how exactly was it decided that this particular short stretch of road that services approximately 13 houses is in need of a close to $500,000 repair, whereas other roads and other localities such as Doctors Point seem to fall by the wayside?
Mr Ferris?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the inclusion of Yambler Place in the approved budget was around the poor condition of the road itself. There are a number of failures that have occurred there over an extensive period of time. But from structurally, the pavement is in poor nick, and it's had a number of heavy patches over the majority of it over a period of time. The seal is at the end of its useful life. Similarly, the curb. There's a large hump in the bowl area, which is causing some challenges around access for residents and also for heavy vehicles moving up there, garbage trucks and delivery trucks, etc. And the drainage is substandard throughout the whole street. So the recommendation is to reconstruct the road.
Councillor Stutchbury, satisfied with that?
Question, please.
Yeah.
You and your department know far more about it than I do, but have there been any instances in recent times of residents not being able to access their houses because of the street?
Mr Ferris?
Mr Mayor, no, there's been no incidences where they haven't been able to access their street. There is this large hump in the bowl area that under wet conditions is hard to negotiate. We have had incidences in recent times where there's been trouble for service vehicles to access, as I say, garbage bins or material being delivered to some of those properties.
Councillor Stutchbury?
So just my final question / statement. The 13 residents have always been able to access their properties. Twice in the last 18 years, Doctors Point residents, approximately 45 residences, have been locked in or out. Is it fair and reasonable that Yambler gets $322,000 thrown at it and Doctors Point is sort of a dot point on the 4-year plan? Do you think that's reasonable?
Mr Ferris?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, Doctors Point will certainly be considered in the upcoming 4-year plan with consideration to access with high river flows, which was the case of recent times. As previously stated, that was a 1 in 10 year event, and the only time I'm aware of in the last 10 years that Doctors Point hasn't been able to be accessed.
Councillor Stutchbury, satisfied?
Thank you, Mr Ferris.
Thank you. Councillor Gleichen, do you wish to speak to the motion at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 14.2, the construction of travel stopway roundabout, contract number 16/02199. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendation on the board.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. And we have Councillor Stutchbury.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, I have a question before you open debate. You comfortable with that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Con, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a question through to the relevant member of staff, please. I understand from the report from staff that we're being recommended a tender that is approximately $20,000 more expensive on the basis that that tenderer, it has greater capacity to commence work immediately. Is there any evidence of safety issues at that roundabout, such as traffic accidents or engineering issues, that make this an urgent repair that justifies the extra 20 grand?
Mr Ferris.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the timing is, it was budgeted over 2 financial periods, so over 16-17, and then there's additional funds in 17-18 to complete, or the draft budget for 17-18 to complete the project. It has been an intersection that's caused issues around traffic flow and safety. We have secured funding from the state government through RMS repair program of $104,000, which will need to be spent before the 30th of June. And Thaguna Drive is an arterial road. Just looking forward to the projects we've got planned in the near future with regard to Thaguna Drive. So we have the project under consideration at the moment. In 17-18 also we have the upgrades to the roundabout at Elizabeth Mitchell Drive and Thaguna Drive. So that will be a significant project as well. And then the following year we have major works at the intersection of Kerr Road and Thaguna Drive. So it will be a staged approach to improving access to Thaguna, which has been identified as a high demand area with our growth in that area at the moment.
Councillor Conn, did you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Just one question, Mr Ferris, probably to yourself, in relation to the report and the commentary in the report. There was a lot of discussion or inferences made about potential results of our traffic study and Thaguna Drive being created to handle more traffic, or replicate. Is that right?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, certainly Thaguna Drive is a major entrance and a major challenge from a traffic perspective. The traffic model that we've been undertaking in conjunction with RMS is due for completion over the next 4 to 8 weeks. From that, we'll be able to then develop a transport strategy for the entire city. But certainly the Thaguna Road interchange will play a major part in that, and what could be done at that interchange and the other interchanges throughout our city.
Thank you. Councillor Stubbs, did you have a question or do you want to speak for? No? Councillor Thurley, did you wish to open debate on that item?
Just very briefly, I think it's a project that does need to go ahead. That price difference is about 1.25%. So to me, that's not a significant sum of money. It is a difficult intersection there because of B-doubles coming out of the truck stop, and a B-double coming from stationary takes quite a lot of time to get out of there and really does disrupt the traffic. On a few occasions, I've seen the traffic banked almost back to the lights at Wagga Road. So I believe it's something we need to get on and get sorted out. It can be also quite dangerous with trucks and other vehicles coming from Catherine Crescent on the opposite side.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Stubbs, would you wish to speak for? Is your button?
I'd like to speak for.
Thank you.
I too am fully in support of this works, just to show Mr Ferris that I'm not totally against every decision that he makes. This intersection is pretty ordinary. I think part of the problem is that there's no northbound on-ramp at Racecourse Road, and a lot of people, myself included, use Dallinger Road and Catherine Crescent to access the freeway. So it's nice that RMS have thrown a quantum of money at this project. And just a final point I'd probably direct to Councillor van der Ven, that sometimes taking the more expensive quote is the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Van, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what that was all about, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stutchbury, did you wish to inform us what that was about?
Oh, I could explain it or I could apologise. What would you prefer?
I think
I'll apologise.
Thank you. There being no further questions or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried, and we need Councillor King to come back into the chamber, if I could. Thanks. Cool. Thank you, Councillor King. Thank you, councillors. We're up to item CM 14.3, Development Application 26 Lot Torrens Title, Subdivision 47 Tabletop Road, Thaguna. Mr Jenkins has left the chamber. Let the records reflect that. And I need a mover. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to move the recommendation and motion that Council A receive and note the contents of this report, and B, grant consent to development application 10.2016.348950.1, proposing a subdivision to create 26 residential lots and 3 public reserves at 47 Tabletop Road, Thaguna, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination shown as attachment 4 to this report.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Councillor Stutchbury.
Happy to second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question from Councillor Con. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to open debate or can I take the question?
Take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have several questions through to the relevant member of staff, please. My first question is regarding the proposed Southern Reserve, which connects to the Tabletop Road Reserve, but doesn't appear to connect on the plan to Corrie's Wood, and it's a proposed biodiversity corridor. Is there a reason that that reserve doesn't connect at the western end?
Mr Key.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the actual formal reserve doesn't connect directly to Corrie's Woodland. At the western side of the property, there's a road access to provide for the small portion of, triangular portion of residential or R1 land on the northwestern portion of the site. Because there's access provided through there that needs to be available for the residential property, and that'll be privately owned. Wasn't proposed to create the reserve over that area, but the width of that reserve is in keeping with the requirements or the recommendations of Thaguna Threatened Species Strategy, which allows for connectivity between reserves that, although they may not be abutting, that there is an opportunity for flora and fauna to cross those areas.
So, Gon, do you have any other questions?
Thank you, Mr Keys. I do have a couple more questions. I have in front of me one of the statement of environmental effects from Habitat Planning. On page 20 of that report, it appears the southern portion of the block, which is the E3 land, has been labelled as stage 2. Are you aware of any intention of the developer to continue development in that portion of the block?
Mr Keys.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the original plans have been amended, so there's the amended plans which are marked as attachment 1 to the report. They still carry over the breakdown of stage 1, 2 and 3. Stage 2 comprises a number of small residential lots, as well as the remainder of the portion of the site, which includes the E3 and this triangular piece of R1 or residential land in the northwest of the site. Now, the association of that is to allow stage 1, which is initial residential development and access off Tabletop Road to occur prior to the creation of these additional lots and including that E3 land. The E3 land, or to the south across the site, has to be attached to a residential portion. It can't be subdivided off and broken up into a smaller portion without meeting the minimum lot size requirements for that residential or R1 zone. I hope that assists in answering the question, Councillor Con.
Councillor Con.
Thank you. I have a third question. which is in regards to the zoning of this area, and I understand that would have been dealt with by previous council. What was the justification for this particular block being zoned E3, given the assessment that it has minimal environmental value? What exactly are we preserving?
Mr. Case.
The zoning was in keeping with the previous zoning of the land when they were transitioned as part of the statewide, or the rollout of the statewide LEP provisions and the zones that were contained in that. There was also consideration in relation to what the future use of the land was. And in this case, in this instance, the land is predominantly underneath the airport overlay, the approach, and for that reason, the very minimal amount of development is permissible or can occur on there given the flight path. An environmental zone was considered appropriate, and that doesn't prohibit future development of the site as an environmental reserve and being protected for that in the longer term.
How are we going, Councillor Conn?
Thank you. Final question. Thanks for your patience, councillors. My final question is, if it were the will of council, would it be possible for the E3 zoning in the southern half of that block to be changed?
Mr. Case.
If I could just clarify, Mr. Mayor, are you asking if council wished it to be changed? Or if it was approached to have it changed, could it be changed? Is that the question?
If we did have the will of council to change it, is it theoretically possible to build residential properties on that land?
Mr. Case.
Theoretically, it would be against all the principles of our LEP, and in particular trying to preserve and ensure the growth of the city in regards to protecting a very valuable asset being the airport. Any development underneath that flight path would put at risk the operations of the airport, and certainly it's not something that we would or have looked to encourage.
Comfortable?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the most appropriate member of staff. I believe that this, if my understanding is correct, this recommendation contains provisions, or this, it's been reached with the parties a understanding that people will be required to contain cats in the future to their own properties. I'm interested to know, is it the view of staff that this will become a standard provision in future developments in Albury? And if not, and if but this is to be unique to this development, why is the creation of feline gulags appropriate in this case and not in others?
Mr. Case.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Cameron. There's been some long and extensive debate regarding cat control across the Albury area, in particular the Thaguna area, given the environmental sensitivities. We've been at pains over a period of time to try and deliberate through those issues and those requests for greater control over cats, and particularly their predatory nature in these environmentally sensitive areas. One of our concerns has always been the limited opportunities available under the current legislation in New South Wales, the very significant lack of experience in other areas across New South Wales of being able to impose restrictions which curtail or restrict the infiltration of domestic cats into sensitive areas. However, recently there's been further research, and there's also been examples of other developments in particularly, say, Tweedshire, as well as the ACT, where we've consulted with local parties in those areas and looked at the opportunities that are available. There's been strong evidence coming out of the ACT in particular, but also recently Adelaide and further studies that suggest that the actions of controlling cats, so we're not banning them and we're not limiting them to being controlled or contained within their properties at night only, but rather a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week restriction to prevent cats from roaming onto other properties. So they're still allowed to go outside, but we're requiring the owners to contain them within their properties. There are certainly some widespread benefits of domestic cats and people having pets, and we certainly don't want to curtail that, and we want to appreciate and accept that or promote that. However, there's also strong evidence from RSPCA to suggest that cats that are contained within their property live longer lives, are healthier, and also cheaper for the owners to maintain and look after. So that's what we're looking to promote here. We believe it is appropriate to promote it even further across newly developed areas in environmentally sensitive areas. So that will be particularly around the Thaguna area, where we have adjacent E3 or environmental lands, and there are significant risks to the flora, or particularly the fauna, in those areas. We will be promoting similar restrictions on the title to try and contain and control domestic cats and their predatory nature in those areas.
Councillor Cameron, you have another question?
Just a wee follow-up, if I may, Mr Mayor. What, by making it part of the title, what's the consequence of that in terms of those who might let their furry friends range free? What sanction might they be liable for?
Mr Keys.
One of the key elements of this is community education, and particularly making buyers aware prior to purchasing the land, and that's why the restrictions being placed on the title. It draws their attention to the original conditions of consent that will be imposed on this development should council grant consent tonight. We could then follow up if council chose at the time to take enforcement action for non-compliance with the development consent. Now, for an individual, that can include a fine of up to $3,000. The exact mechanisms and the measures in which we would enforce this requirement are something that we're proposing would be developed whilst the subdivision is being constructed. We do that in consultation with the community, local community representatives, but also in particular our Companion Animals Advisory Panel and a Sustainability Advisory Committee are two areas that we've identified that do have an interest in this area and do have some strong community representation that's very valid, and we'd like to seek their input.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Keys. Councillor Van, would you wish to speak an open debate on this particular item? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, this is one of a lot of development applications before council, and today and in the near future in our growth corridor, Thaguna-Wallinga. I think that the proponents and staff are to be commended for the work that's been done in trying to manage that biodiversity. And if this is to be a blueprint for future developments in Thaguna, I think that we could do a hell of a lot worse. Your minimum lot sizes, your amount of area set aside for public reserves, and also, may I say, the cat control measures are really groundbreaking from the perspective of where this city needs to be in the future as far as control of feral cats or just roaming cats is concerned. So from all perspectives, for mine, this is a good development, and it takes into account not only the environment but the future environment for people and flora and fauna as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan. I have a speaker against. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I firstly would like to acknowledge the need for growth and development in Thaguna. Albury's obviously a growing city, and we need somewhere for families to live. And I'd also like to appreciate the effort of the developers in their attempt to meet biodiversity requirements. They have got large lot sizes, like Councillor Vandervan. They have allocated a significant portion of developable land to reserves. However, I have ongoing concerns that we're removing 700 native trees while we continue to preserve empty paddocks to the south of that land. I appreciate that Mr Keys has explained it would be very difficult to rezone that land, but the developers seem to have no intention for forward planting on that E3 land. It appears to be limited to the reserves that are on the R1 land. And until I can be reassured that there will be a appropriate amount of planted E3 land with native species to preserve our biodiversity, I can't support this development.
Thank you, Councillor Con. I have another speaker for Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. These decisions are always difficult decisions and always involve an element of compromise. This one, to me, has made some good compromises, and it's worth noting that the average lot size is over almost 1,400 square metres, which is quite a large block, and gives people the opportunity to plant native gardens, something that I think we should also encourage as a council by education and encouragement. The cat control stuff is something that I've had on my agenda for quite some time. I live on a very small suburban block with a native garden populated by numerous bird species, and I'm constantly annoyed when I wake in the middle of the night to hear cats fighting in my front garden. This, to me, is one of the best moves this council has made for a long time. I read the paper by Mulvaney and Isles relating to the cat issue in Canberra, and there are 13 suburbs in Canberra that do it. We had a presentation here at a previous community forum, and it talked about cat and cat tracker, and it's known that cats roam up to a hectare in the daytime and almost 2 to 3 hectares of a night time. And this is just not acceptable when we're close to those environmental zones. There are lots of councils done it. Sherbrooke in Victoria, 1991 they did this. And within 3 years, the lyrebird population increased dramatically. So there's no doubt that cats are a significant problem in these sorts of areas. They're less a problem in inner city, but they're a huge problem in this area. And I commend the council for this decision. And I would expect that it would extend to all new developments occurring on the margins of our city close to bushland. So I do support this development.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. I know other speakers against at this point. I've Councillor Stutchby wishing to speak for.
Thank you very much. I too am in favour of this proposal. I like the bigger block size, the cat control measures I think are excellent and should be included in future DAs in similar locations as well. I acknowledge Councillor Con's concern about the trees. I note that when the revised plans came through, some hollow-bearing trees were retained by the developer, which I think was a good move. Overall, I think that it's a DA worth supporting. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchby. Councillor Doxey, wish to speak for.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I lived at Thaguna for 3 years, and I'm quite well aware of that particular as part of a tabletop road. I flew over it this afternoon, flying back into Albury, so I made sure I was on the right-hand side of the aircraft and had a good look from the air. I will be supporting this this recommendation. Just very briefly on the cats, I think this is very first groundbreaking, but I think it's more than just the cats themselves. While they are predators, there's no doubt about that. It's the owners themselves that are responsible for the cat. And I'd like to see this implemented across a number of development applications that we consider over the next period of council. And I don't think it's a matter of just knocking down the old trees. From my observation from the air, they don't appear to be that significant in total, and they can be other trees can be planted in their place in more appropriate areas. And I think that the area that is cleared for the flight path is not the place to replant trees just for that particular reason. It's there for a reason, and I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. There being no further speakers for or against, Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'm happy to put the motion and leave your hands raised for a division. All those in favour? Councillor Stutchby, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Mack, Councillor King, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. Those against is Councillor Con. Thank you, Councillor. The motion is carried. The 14.4, the 2017 National General Assembly of Local Government call for motions. Thank you, councillors. No one wishing to move it, or Councillor Vanderford?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I haven't had a chance to think about any other motions, but I'll move the recommendation as printed A and B.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Councillor Glacken?
Yes, happy to support the recommendation as a motion moved by Councillor Van der Ven.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to open debate on that item?
Just quickly, Mr Mayor, anything that we can do to highlight the issues around energy availability and pricing as far as our community is concerned, I think it behoves us to do that. I think this particular submission raises the issue about the equity of pricing and market supply for domestic energy. I'm not sure that it actually gives us an opportunity to address the issues as far as our residents are concerned that all seem to be suffering the high cost of energy for one reason or another. So if we can perhaps strengthen that particular side of it, I'd welcome that. But apart from that, I think that the rest of it's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vander. And Councillor Thurley, you have a question?
Yeah, it relates to some matters we've discussed at great length in this chamber in respect to review of the Local Government Act and rating systems and so on. I wonder perhaps Mr Finlayson might give us some update of where the government is in following up those recommendations, or whether this is something that should be pursued more actively at this conference.
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal have completed their review of the local government rating system in New South Wales. They've submitted their final report to the Minister. However, that report has not yet been made publicly available.
Councillor Thurley, does that answer your question?
It does. It's not the answer I would have liked to have, but it answers the question.
Thank you. There being no further questions or debate, Councillor Vander, do you wish to close debate?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Let the records reflect that Mr Jenkins has finally returned to the chamber. 14.5, planning legislation changes. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Con.
Thank you. I had a question, Mr Mayor.
Question? I'll go to Councillor Doxey then.
Happy to move the recommendations appears on the screen, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. Councillor Thurley.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Doxey, I have a question from Councillor Con. Happy to take it before we open debate? Yes. Councillor Con.
Thank you. Through to the relevant member of staff, please. I had a read of the draft submission from staff about the planned legislation changes, and I noted that we're opposing the proposed early consultation incentive for development applications, and I was wondering if that could be explained, please.
Mr Keys.
Mr Mayor, one of the concerns that we have is about the timing. And the provisions that are, well, to be honest, there's a lack of detail in the regulations haven't been prepared in these changes. So it's a broad-based concept that they're putting forward, that they would extend the notification period and the requirements for notification of some forms of development, and we're actually opposing that until we have more detail. One of the concerns we've had in the past is that they've proposed notification in our books for the sake of notification to say it was done rather than actually looking at genuine notification. The emphasis under the previous planning reform changes was to get the community involved in this original plans for the area, so strategic planning side, and make sure they were involved and had a strong say in that, rather than getting to a final point of a development application where people have already invested somewhere, in some cases, 6 to 12 months in planning, and they're committed to the design and the outcomes that are provided through that. And then it opens up a raft of issues in terms of trying to actually have some valid input and say and determination in the final changes that may be proposed in a development. And that's essentially the reasoning behind the general submission that we're making. Again, I would point there is a need to look at the detail and understand what the implications are of that detail before a final comment can be made.
Councillor Con, you have a follow-up?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Keys. Councillor Doxey, I still have one more question. Councillor Vanderman?
Thank you, with Councillor Doxey's forbearance, to the relevant member of staff, Mr Mayor. You only have to go back a few years to remember that there was a very large New South Wales-based campaign to keep planning local. There was T-shirts, rallies, all that sort of stuff. And I'm just wondering, with some of the stuff that I noticed in the report, especially like under decision-making, part 2, ability for minister to make direction for a council to increase the level of delegation of applications that will be determined by council staff, and other parts of the proposed changes, whether this is not something that is taking planning out of the hands of council, or just some continuation down that pathway which the community clearly rejected some years ago.
Mr Keys.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Van der Ven. The emphasis under the Keep Planning Local was to stop the JRPPs and state significant development taking over from local councils, and that probably hasn't been strengthened in these proposals or any changes. If anything, they probably returned a little bit of the development, or proposing to return a little bit of development back to local councils by lifting the thresholds for joint regional planning panel applications, as well as some forms of state significant development. I guess the push has really come, and the minister made it very clear last week, where they're looking to have 90% of development approved in less than 40 days. And that's to pick up complying development, and we're talking about alterations and additions to houses, new houses, and expanding the forms of complying development. The detail, again, is still to come through. They've got some draft legislation out for comment at the moment in relation to schools and community facilities, which I think are very relevant to this council, and certainly something that we don't want to see continue, or to expand the state government's role, or to take those opportunities for our council to have a say in what occurs in our local area. So we're still trying to retain that, but also recognise there have been some changes to address some of the concerns about local involvement.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Keys. Councillor Doxey, do you wish to open debate on this item?
I'm happy to close now.
I have a
Thank
councillor
you.
wishing to speak for. Did you wish to open debate?
No, I'll wait and listen.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchby, you wish to speak for this particular proposition? Your button's depressed. Must be a malfunction on the screen. Councillor Doxey, do you wish to close debate on this item?
Happy to close it as it is. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 14.6, the Hume Passenger Rail Research Project. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you, to move the recommendation as a motion.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to open debate on this item?
Yes, if I may, please, Mr Mayor. And I doubt there'll be very much debate. However, should the need arise, someone feel the need arise, then great. This is a good report, and it's a significant factor in what we in our community, and I mean not just the people of Albury, but our regional community, have been experiencing for some years. It highlights the fact that we do require, and we do rely on good transport infrastructure. That transport infrastructure being provided by state and at times federal government. It is imperative that our community, one of the largest regional communities in the northern part of Victoria, and indeed encroaching into New South Wales, does so heavily need and so heavily rely on the state governments to ensure that we do have good infrastructure. The report highlights that we have not, in a significant period of time, when we're looking at a decade or so, had that infrastructure provision provided to us, and it has deteriorated. We do know from this report, which supports the anecdotal evidence that we have known for many years now, that our industry and resources within our community rely on this infrastructure. And it is imperative that we, as a council, work with other councils and shires within our region to ensure that we do receive attention, that this infrastructure does so very very importantly need. And so, yes, I do support the report, and I do support our continued participation in a collaborative way with the councils and shires within the region, but also the state and indeed the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. Councillor Vanderman, who's to speak for this?
Yeah, just briefly, Mr Mayor, again with your indulgence, one of the issues for the group, it was started probably early last year and the collaboration set up. But one of the things we didn't have was any facts and figures around our representations to various levels of government about the opportunity costs that we're missing out on as far as the rubbish railway that we've currently got. So what this actual survey has done is actually quantify not only the lost opportunities but the future opportunities that exist if we get some decent infrastructure back for that railway line. And I think from that perspective, we now have the figures to back up what we're saying, that this is important not only for our community here but for our regional community all along the North East Railway corridor as far as economic opportunities, tourism and business is concerned. And I think it was vital that this study and the survey was done and completed, and we now have the facts and figures to back up our representations to all levels of government. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. No other speakers against. Councillor Doxey, to speak for.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We, the community, know the cost of flying to Melbourne and the restrictions on weight, and we need a reliable rail service that provides an alternative for our community. We all know that, because in most cases people these days drive to Melbourne because they can't take sufficient baggage on the Rex aircraft, because there's a single flight flying to Melbourne and there's a weight restriction. This is vital because the community deserve first-class services to Melbourne from Albury. This has been around for quite some time. There are a number of people being seesawing and throwing the baton to different places, and no responsibility has been accepted by a lot of people over this. This is a great strategy, a great opportunity for the community to become involved, and I endorse the council's decision and fully support the recommendation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. There being no further question or debate, Councillor Gluck, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you, and I've been delighted to hear the support by the councillors who have spoken to this motion this evening. I was impressed with the number or with the depth of the research done to enable this report, and it showed a significant number of reasons as to why people would want to use the train, not just to enable them to go with their baggage, Councillor Doxey, but that is absolutely correct. That's one of the reasons many people might wish to take the train down to Melbourne. There were medical reasons, education. There were a huge number of reasons, and people rely on public transport to be able to do so. They also rely on public transport that is timely and efficient. And the current system that we have on that rail corridor is neither efficient, it's not sufficient, and it is unreliable. We know that over a number of years that service has become even worse, while there has been significant work apparently undertaken, or there has been significant work undertaken on that rail link. We have heard within our community and across Australia that there is an attempt to, or there is work in progress to very fast trains. That would be great, and that is something to look forward to in the future. But for now, for our community, for our regional community, we need an existing rail link, an existing service to actually function as it should. Our community is a large community that relies on that service. It needs to be efficient, it needs to be effective, it needs to run on time, and it needs to be the trains, not bus links. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gluck. And with that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. In relation to officers' reports for noting, CM15, there are none. CM16, delegates' reports for noting, there are none. CM17, notice of urgent business. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. At 1:11 p.m. this afternoon, we received an email from the Acting General Manager, the gist of which was that the response to the people from Howlong who had requested to make a presentation to Council and the group called the Howlong Community Committee Incorporated regarding the proposed Cleanaway waste management application would be denied. And the email sent to us this afternoon said that it was following this request was discussed with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor earlier today. Now, the Local Government Act does give power to the Mayor to act and make policy inter alia between meetings. It gives no power whatsoever to the Deputy Mayor, so I'm at a complete loss what the reference is to a discussion with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor of this matter. This is a decision that should properly have been made by Council. This is not a decision that should have been arbitrarily made or made by some sort of star chamber consisting of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor this afternoon, on the very afternoon that we have a full Council meeting here tonight. It's not acceptable behaviour in my view. This is a matter that deserves...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Can you rule whether this is urgent or not? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. I'm more than happy to accept the argument or the discussion. Is there a question at the end of this, Councillor Cameron?
On your point of order, Mr Mayor. On the point of order, on Councillor Vanderman's point of order, is it your ruling that my question or my comments so far are in order?
I'm happy that they're in order at this point, Councillor Cameron, as long as there's a question at the end of it.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Will the Mayor explain why this decision was taken?
That's a question.
That's a question. Secondly, I foreshadow and give notice that it's my intention to move a notice of motion for the next council meeting that this group be given an audience. Whether we agree with them or not, they have a right to be heard. This project is being generated by a contract of this council with Cleanaway. We can't wash our hands of it and walk away from it, nor should we. And surely we bear a moral responsibility to hear from those who may have the facility located in their town.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. That was the last bit was commentary. So the question in relation to the decision not to allow this group to come to council and deliver any presentation to council in an open council meeting was made on the basis that this same issue was brought to our attention by a group from Girogery, and at the time of that decision making, which you were party to, it was decided that council would give them the opportunity to present to staff and or councillors if they wish to be present in a informal setting. Informal setting.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Cameron.
It is true that I was a party to that decision, but I did not support that decision.
Well,
in saying I was a party to that decision, you're implying that I supported it.
Well, I'm happy to say that you're present when the decision was made, Councillor Cameron, just to clear the lines in relation to that decision.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Please carry on.
So the precedent that was set in relation to the Girogery group was that they did attend an informal meeting, and I believe it was with yourself and Councillor Thurley, and that was the result, and their presentation was made to those two councillors and their concerns taken on board. I do not see that having that precedent being set, that it will be fair to the group from Girogery to say now the same issue apparently, probably with different elements, exists at Howlong, and we're now going to say, oh, it's okay for them and not for others. I think one thing this council has done over the past 4 years or 5 years of this council group, we have been consistent and we have been fair. And in the instance of fairness in this case, I believe I had the right to make the decision, and it wasn't the acting general manager that made the decision, it was myself. And the deputy mayor was sitting present, and maybe that was a grammatical error in the email, but you are correct. The deputy mayor does not make decisions inter alia, and neither would she want to. Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you have a question?
It's more a clarification, since I was a councillor present at that previous meeting, and I believe it's entirely appropriate that they contact the staff and they invite staff and councillors to meet with them. I don't see any necessity to have them here making a presentation in the chamber. And I guess the other question I would really like Councillor Cameron to reflect on his use of the word star chamber when referring to a meeting you had with the acting general manager. I would find that offensive if it were me.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. I'm probably used to the histrionics in that respect. So, Councillor Cameron, is that all you've got to say in the matter?
Mr Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll take it on notice and we'll move on. Thank you. Confidential matters, CM18, we have none, and the meeting is closed at 7:01 p.m. Thank you.